Hey everyone, and welcome to my November wrap-up. First off, I want to say thank you so much to all my new subscribers and for everyone who's commented and made me feel so welcome in the BookTube community. I'm really surprised that anyone's commented or watched my videos yet, so yeah, thank you so much. Right, on to the wrap-up. I've been meaning to actually make this video last week, but I've not been well. I'm still not, but I'm at least a little bit more human looking now than I was last week. The first book I'm going to talk about I actually read in October, but because obviously I didn't have a channel in October, there's no October wrap-up, so I'm going to sneak it into this one because I wanted to speak a little about it, but not enough to do a big review. And that book was Kurt Vonnegut's Armageddon in Retrospect. Now this is a collection of stories put together after his death, and they're all surrounding the war, mainly in Dresden. Now if you didn't know this about Kurt, he was actually a prisoner of war in Dresden and survived and witnessed the 1945 bombings of the city that completely obliterated it, basically. It had a huge influence on his writing, as you can tell from his most famous work, Slaughterhouse 5, if you've read that. That's also based in Dresden. These stories are not really like that. They don't have the sci-fi element to them. They're more your sort of straightforward war stories. But, you know, Kurt twist. What I particularly liked about this was that it had an introduction by his son, and he wrote about what it was like growing up having Kurt Vonnegut as your dad. I mean, he was quite an extraordinary man, and you know, made for an interesting father. So I like that. That was a nice touch. And also another thing I enjoyed about this book was at the beginning of the chapters there are actually drawings that were sketched by Kurt, and I think that just adds another thing that's kind of, I don't know, just a little bit, it just makes the book a little bit more human, I guess, and a little bit more into his world. I definitely recommend this book to anyone really, but if you like war stories then you'll definitely like this. If you're also just a fan of Kurt, I think you'll enjoy this. If you're new to him though, I probably recommend you start with one of his more famous works. If you really like sci-fi, then go for Slaughterhouse 5. And I really liked this and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Francescas America. Now, you might have already watched a review video on this, but if you haven't, I shall link it in the down bar. I'm not going to say too much about this book because I've already talked at length about it. I gave it 3 stars, so I did like it. I think I read it in a couple of days, so it was kind of like I didn't want to put it down. But like I spoke about in the video, I didn't like the protagonist. I found him quite annoying. And the fact that Kafka's work always leaves me a little bit confused, and there's no different in this book. Although this one is a little bit more easier to read probably than his other works. It's still got your usual Kafka themes of oppressive figures who issue orders that make no sense. Yeah, so this book is actually unfinished, but I knew that coming to the novel, so it wasn't a surprise. So if you are reading this, just be aware that, you know, you don't get any answers from it. But it's still enjoyable, and if you like Kafka, you'll probably have read it anyway. But if you're new to Kafka, I definitely suggest you start with Metamorphoses, because I love that story, and it's, I think, the only one of his works so far that I've read, and I completely understand, so that's always good. The third book I read this month was Jean-Paul Sartre's The Age of Reason. Now, I have to admit, I had put off reading this book for some time. I was pretty intimidated by it, to be honest. I didn't think I'd understand it. I thought it would all just go straight over my head. I wouldn't get the existentialism parts in it or any of the philosophies involved. And I am so happy that I read it. I'm in love. I'm completely in love with Sartre now. I want to read all his works and I can't wait. I've even put it on my Christmas list that I want more of his works. That's how much I love him. This book was just amazing. I couldn't put it down. I'm not going to do a huge talk about it here because I actually want to do a standalone review, so I don't want to sort of end up repeating myself. So basically it's sort of 3 days in the life of a guy and a couple of his friends. It's done in stream of consciousness writing, what can be a little bit confusing at times because you're not sure who's talking sometimes, but it wasn't too bad. It's not like James Joyce or anything. Yeah, nobody's particularly likeable, but saying that, I absolutely love this book so much, and I cannot wait to read more of his, and I can't wait to do the next videos to tell you all about why I love this book. Have you read it? Have you read any more of Sartre? If you have, please recommend me what you think I would like next. And like I say, I've already got some on my Christmas list, so fingers crossed Santa brings me some. Give this 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, this next book is pretty silly, but I think we all need a little like brain break after Sartre and Kafka. So the next book I read was I Want a Cat by Tony Ross. Now the reason I read this book is because I got talking with my boyfriend about books that we read at school that had an impact on us and that we can still remember and love dearly, and this was one of them. So I actually ended up giving into nostalgia and buying this book off eBay, because it's not one that I had at home as a child. This was a book I read at school, but it was my go-to book whenever we had reading time. And I will honestly say it shaped me into the cat lady I am today. So I'm going to just show you a few little bits from the book. Basically, the story revolves around Jessie, who desperately wanted a cat, so much so that she made herself a cat suit and wore it and refused to take this cat suit off no matter what. She even wore it in the bath. What? Find the picture. I particularly liked that. I just love this book. I don't know, I'm trying to do like a serious review about a kid's picture book, but as a kid I loved the fact that she had the nerve to dress up as a cat, and I so wanted a cat as a child. I desperately wanted a cat, and I never got one. We had a dog, and we had all sorts of other pets, but we didn't have a cat. And it did cross my mind, what if I dressed up as a cat? Would I get a cat? But I was too much of a good girl to do that sort of thing. But and yeah, she is kind of bratty for doing this, and it would be so irritating if a child did this. But I loved it, and I thought, oh, I want to be like you, Jessie. I'm going to get a cat suit when I grow up, and I'm going to have a cat. And that's pretty much what I've done with my life. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you the ending, but it has a bit of a twist. So if you've got children, maybe you'd like this book to read to them, or if you just love cats and are crazy and like to read kids' picture books, well, this book is for you. 5 out of 5 stars. For the rest of November, I was reading Simone de Beauvoir's Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter. Now, I didn't actually finish this book until this week, so it will go over into my December wrap-up, but I'm actually planning to do a big review of this, as you can see from all the little tags. But I just wanted to mention it as it did take up quite a chunk of November's reading as well. Basically, it is just a memoir of her childhood up until she was about 18 or 21, and her childhood friends and what it was like growing up in a sort of a bourgeoisie family. You can see from the very beginning the kind of early feminist thoughts were in her, although it doesn't go much into this in this book. I think it's sort of that part of her life kicks off more afterwards, but this is more about childhood friends and her relationship with her family. I absolutely adored this. If you've read it, you'll know what I mean about the ending. Just broke my heart. I will do a much bigger review on this soon, as I have lots to say about it, and I'll probably do a discussion video actually, because there's some quotes in that I really would like to say out, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read it. Well, that was my November wrap-up. I hope you liked it. Just a quick apology about the change in lighting. I've just had to refilm this last section because for some reason it had gone blurry, and I thought it's probably better to have it dark and at least be able to see than blurry and light. Please leave a comment below if you want to talk about the books that I showed today, or if you just want to say hello, that's cool too. And please subscribe, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed to me already. I'm just so chuffed, I really am. And until next time,